I have like the real answer is a nuanced one and maybe not going to be so helpful initially, which is like, you don't have to. Some men don't, but you also might want to, or you might need to. And it really is individual and depending on the person and the situation. Like there's no easy answer. It's a calculation you might have to make.
Hi, I'm John Paul, and a really warm welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm delighted to be continuing in conversations around bisexuality and specifically bisexuality within mixed orientation relationships and how that's navigated, how to go from a place of awareness. Is there a process of, say, exploration through experience that's needed? And in that case, how is that navigated within, I was going to say the confines, but of course, it's also lovely to be in long-term committed relationships, monogamous relationships. In order to have the conversation, I'm absolutely delighted to have on a returning guest. His name is Rob Brooks Cohen. Rob is a podcast host of the Two Bi Guys by One Bi Guy. He's also a coach, and he coaches people specifically in situations like this, and also the author of an amazing book called Bisexual Married Men, Stories of Relationships, Acceptance and Authenticity. So there are very few people in the world, I think, that have the kind of experience in this area that Rob does. So absolutely delighted to have you back on, Rob. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, thank you, John Paul. I'm glad to be here. I loved our conversation last time, and there's always so much more to get into in this experience. And I like how within the confines of a marriage can be nice and cozy sometimes. Just confines can sometimes be lovely, and restrictions can build intimacy. But yes, I also take your point that sometimes people want to expand beyond the arrangements that have been made. So we'll get into it.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking with the thumbnail for this video to put the words "do I have to," because the actual context for this is that a couple of people have said to me when they've come to an awareness about their identity, and some people go into long-term relationships with an awareness. Other people realize at some point during, and a question I will often get asked is something, do I have to open the relationship? What does this mean as far as that sexual part of me, the same-sex attraction? You help people navigate, as I do, those kind of situations often. So what would your initial reflections be?
That's it. Funny because I was working on a coaching resource yesterday and posing that exact question in the text of what I was writing. Like, so do I have to explore this? I've realized this. What do I do next? And I have like the real answer is a nuanced one and maybe not going to be so helpful initially, which is like, you don't have to. Some men don't, but you also might want to, or you might need to. And it really is individual and depending on the person and the situation. Like there's no easy answer. It's a calculation you might have to make. The desire to explore it is very normal, and many people experience that. And also, like, if you're already in a committed partnership, the love and relationship you've built there can sometimes be a barrier to exploring sex with other people, because many people are monogamous, and that's valid to want and common also. But yeah, I've seen it go both ways. Some guys are content to come out and realize that they have sexual fluidity and to be able to talk about it and share it, but they don't have to be with other people, and they're perfectly happy once they move through that not to explore it, or if not perfectly happy, they're making that sacrifice for the benefit of their partnership and the agreements they've made. And like, it's a sacrifice they're willing to make. And then I've also seen a lot of people who do need to explore it or want to explore it so much that it's getting in the way if they don't. And that can be challenging within a partnership. Some people will stay together through that, and it's very difficult. And sometimes, it's important enough to explore it that they're willing to risk the relationship. And sometimes the relationship ends because their partner isn't on board. So there's many there's many different ways it can work out, and it's really just a matter of checking in. And this is what I actually work with clients on. Like, do you specifically, who I'm talking to, need to explore this or not? And what feelings and thoughts come up? And what does it feel like to never explore this, to know you never will? And how does it feel to do it? And I just try to put people in the different energies. Like, imagine you're there in each of these different scenarios. Put yourself there. Okay, how does it feel? What thoughts and feelings come up in you? And that's where we start, and we kind of work through it. And it often ends up leading back to some core wound or something in their past, or some feeling they have about being authentic or being validated. Anyway, there's so many different places it goes, but it depends on what it's leading you to and where it's coming from in your life. That's a long answer.
We like long answers. It's a podcast, so long answers.
Perfect.
Authenticity, that word's used a lot, isn't it? I mean, the title of your book has the word authenticity in it. And to decide in this situation what is authentic and what isn't, a lot of people would aspire to be authentic. So that word is used a lot, isn't it? But as you say, I suppose when you're making a choice as to romantically, sexually, who you're going to be with, what we would want for someone is that it is based on authentically who they are, rather than avoiding something through fear, or I guess pursuing something for a reason other than authenticity, sexual behavior, whatever that may have been repressed, that I suppose it could go in a funny kind of way the other way. So how do you decide, or what is authentic?
Right. I mean, I do think it can change over time. And one of the things that's coming up for me as you say that is like, it's not a fixed destination, authenticity. It's a constant recalibration. And also, like, sometimes you have to explore things to find out what is authentic. Like, sometimes you have these desires, they're moving you in a certain direction, and that is important to listen to and to see what's there. Like, I believe our desires are divine, but that doesn't mean like doing every single thing you fantasize about is authentic. That doesn't mean like every thought that pops into your head has to be acted out. And so I think it's important to like listen to those desires and be honest about them. And maybe, yeah, like if you feel like you want to explore them and you've made arrangements in your life that's okay, like, then yeah, explore it. But that doesn't mean you're going to stay in that place. The actual exploration will help you feel what it is, and then you will have more information to figure out what is authentic to you. Maybe that thing you're fantasizing about changes something about you in a way you didn't expect. It shows you things in a new way. And when it lives up here, it's in your head, it's different from when you actually act it out. And so the important thing is to just notice the feelings and the sensations and the thoughts that come up, and then you'll figure out what's authentic. And the word I'm using more and more lately, rather than authentic, even though I said it, is alignment. I'm really learning about like how to live in alignment and like allowing life to kind of flow through me as opposed to resisting. And so when I explore things, it's about like noticing, does this feel aligned? Do I feel in the flow of things? That's authenticity in another way of looking at it. Or also like when, authenticity is not just about what do I want to explore sexually or live out in my sexuality. Your commitments to your partner can be authentic and can be aligned. Your values are authentic if they've been arrived at in an aligned way. And so you may have desire, but also it can be authentic and aligned to have limits to how you explore that and to make agreements with a partner. Like, just because something isn't exciting doesn't mean it's not aligned. A boundary and a negotiated arrangement with a partner can help you live in alignment depending on where you are and what your values are.
You're talking there about like the internal journey, internal alignment as well. You mentioned external, so as the other person, and the relationship itself. A number of people be in relationship with people who just won't accept anything other than monogamy. In your work with people, what kind of things have happened there? They've come up against no, this is not something
Yeah.
that I would accept. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it all again, and it's really a spectrum. And I would say more of the people who encounter that kind of roadblock, like I want to open it up and my partner does not want to, those
Mm.
are the ones that end up coming to me more because that's a big struggle and they don't know what to do. Whereas I think there are a lot of people who come out, want to open up, and their partner is like, okay, maybe a little reluctant or maybe enthusiastic, and they do it. And
Mm.
fewer of those people are coming to me for support. So I do see this a lot, and I've seen it work in so many different ways. Like I've seen, mostly it's by men coming to me who are married to women and often straight women, although I do work with some women as well. But that's mostly what's happening in my practice. And I've seen women who are monogamous and they don't want to open up. And what I focus on with the men, because I'm mostly coaching the men, and I'm like, okay, you can't control your partner and you don't want to try to push her or convince her.
Mm.
Like pushing too hard will not lead to the good outcome that you want of opening up. And so we focus on them and their internal blocks and approaching this external block with alignment, with that sort of sense of calm. And why is this important to me? Not just like I want this and the craving, but why
Mm.
is this important? Aside from the excitement, what is this doing for me? How am I exploring my identity? Why is that important to me? And what am I willing to accept? And what do I really need? So, we focus on the one person. Okay, but your question is what ends up happening? I've seen some women who are totally opposed to non-monogamy who over time through this process of
Mm.
getting real with their partners, they open up to it and they find a path towards it. And sometimes that's like a small window of they will allow their husband to explore in a certain way with boundaries and guidelines. Sometimes it's a little bigger. They'll both start exploring or they'll start exploring together. Or they both open up the marriage and that leads to new paradigms. And I've seen many women who are opposed to it initially embrace it eventually, and they're grateful for
Mm.
it. And in the best case scenario, being with other people can bring the partnership closer together.
Mm.
And they'll actually develop more intimacy because of all the conversations around this stuff. And sometimes exploring sex with others leads you to appreciate what's there at home even more. That's sort of what I've found in my polyamory.
Mm.
And then on the other side of things, I've worked with guys who their wives will not open things up, or won't open it up enough to the guy's satisfaction, or like they can't really explore what they need to. And then it's really a question of like, where are your values? What is important to you? Can you go the rest of your life without one or the other? Because you
Mm.
can't force these things together. There's another person involved. And so is it more important to explore this part of your identity and have these experiences? Or is it more important to stay committed to this partnership? And then it often brings up looking at the relationship and what's really gone on there and how aligned is the relationship for you.
Mm.
Sometimes this is sort of a symptom of a relationship that wasn't aligned to begin with for other reasons. And so I do work with people who are going through divorce or separation, or who eventually get to the point where they think or realize this isn't aligned. I can't be with this person. We're going to separate. And I would say most of the time when that happens, this revealed misalignments that were already there. It isn't like exploring outside the relationship is the only reason they end up
Mm.
separating. It's usually an indicator of other misalignments. And so that's sort of the other end of the spectrum. And then there's a lot of stuff in the middle where there's reluctant acceptance or narrow pathways to explore, but not fully whatever they want. And I also do group coaching cohorts with a lot of men in this situation, bi married men who are with women. And we meet weekly for 6 weeks in each cohort. And then, I'll start a new one. And a lot of movement can happen in 6 weeks of like focus, and in the groups people learn from each other, and really magic happens by just like seeing what other people are going through and how they're navigating it with their wives. And there's always like differences in what's going on, but then so many similarities in like the process and how to communicate with their partners, and how to be sensitive to their partner while also being aligned and authentic and sharing what's in them, not hiding things or keeping things in just to protect the partner, but also like, having boundaries and taking care of their feelings as well.
I know that huge being part of a community, talking to other men in similar situations, that's very healing, isn't it? Through relationship as well. That part of you that was out of sight possibly is now in relationship and accepted and even loved by others. I suppose that of itself can change things very significantly for someone without
Totally.
even necessarily having to go out and into the romantic relationship or sexual relationship and change things there.
Absolutely. I think like you've actually hit on such an important point. Like so many people, when they get to me and they're navigating this, they think, I have to figure this out. What am I going to do? How are we going to open the marriage? Like the opening or not is the thing that needs to be moved through. And what many of them find actually is that just talking about it is so healing, either if it's individual with me, but especially in the groups when they talk about it with each other, that can shift things for them in a way that they didn't expect. And that moves the energy. And then that, just like the validation and acceptance and the feeling of not being alone in this, that can shift things so much that it then changes the whole question of, do I need to explore this and how do I need to explore it? And I think it's such an important foundation, is like having this community and the support and the healing from that. I almost would say to people, like, don't negotiate your relationship with your partner until you feel this sense of normalization, validation,
Totally.
healing within you. Otherwise, you're not approaching that negotiation with the right energy, and you might push towards something that isn't really aligned. So I think that healing work is such an important first step.
Absolutely. I would say exactly the same thing. I mean, in the context of groups or individual therapy as well. Rob, alignment, let's use that word. Also, authenticity. We all love the sound of being in alignment. If somebody was to say, how do I know if I'm in alignment or not? What would you say about that?
I mean, notice where resistance is coming up. Resistance is an indicator.
I suspect resistance, as well, if you're looking at an emotion, it's probably fear.
Yeah, I think fear is the big one. Worry about the future. Yeah, fear you're making the wrong decision. And I have been really cultivating and working on this soul trait of trust, because I have a lot of anxiety and fear, and especially fear that like I'm on the wrong path. I should be doing this other thing. And I'm really been trying to cultivate trust. I also think something you said earlier relates to how you know if you're in alignment, and it's that feeling of calm and peace. Like,
Definitely. Yeah.
you don't have to feel that all the time, and like excitement is great. We want to feel excited at times, but like you don't necessarily need excitement every second. Like, and in fact, if you're jumping around from exciting thing to exciting thing, you might be pushing at something too hard. And actually, when you are living in an aligned way, you will feel that sense of peace, and you will just have that inner knowing that you're on the right path, and that trust in the universe will will come and flow more freely. So I think that's an important thing to notice is like, do you have a sense of calm and peace? Not every moment, but can you find it on a regular basis? And if not, maybe there's something misaligned. And like, are you moving towards the life that you want? And like, are good things happening? Like if you're on the right path, I think you'll feel that calm and peace, and nice things will be happening in your life.
Yeah.
So those are two things to look for.
Yes, definitely. I would have said the same. Is how life feels often, isn't it? I guess also living more intentionally rather than defensively. If you're looking at a situation where somebody's been hiding sexuality or is in conflict about it, there's a lot of avoidance of things, possibly looking away, secrets, lots of anger.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
that's another thing which can often be the case where somebody has
Yeah.
a sexuality that they're sort of keeping out of the way that's been somehow prohibited by the
Right.
external environment. As people feel out, men as well often are going to understandably feel angry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of those kind of emotions can come up. And, when you're living with those more and more, it's difficult to live with. And I think something to notice about all of that is like, how able are you to speak what's in your mind? Like, can you share all this? I think those emotions, fear and anger and whatever else, can get really stuck when they're living inside us and we're not able to share them. And so allowing them to flow through you and out of you, and to share them with loved ones is like such an important piece of alignment. And when you don't feel able to do that, that'll lead to resistance. It'll lead to those feelings being amplified and taking up even more space inside of you. And so sometimes the first question shouldn't be like, I need to explore this. How do I open up? How do I explore this? The first question should really be like, how can I be aligned and share what's in my head and say what I'm thinking? That's the first piece of alignment that I try to work on with many clients, is like, you got to just say this stuff to, first you got to figure out how to say it to me and be really honest and open. Like, just say it to anyone, or even journal it and say it to yourself in a sense, but don't just think it. You got to write it or say it to someone. And then how do you share that with loved ones? And that'll create intimacy, and it can be difficult, but it'll create the pathways forward to releasing all that stuff.
As far as bringing it into relationship with loved ones, say a romantic partner, do you coach people on that? I know what they're going to say is an individual experience, isn't it? Their own individual thoughts. But are there ways you would suggest to tell someone or talk to someone about it?
About like coming out or opening up, or just any of it?
And all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is individualized. And like, what I find is a lot of the times, I'll talk to a client and they have, they'll tell me something that they haven't shared with their partner. And just because of like what this space is and what coaching is and who I am, they feel comfortable sharing it, and they're not yet sharing it there. But then once they say it out loud to me, it gives them the whole framework. And I'll say like, okay, interesting. Like and I'll validate what they're saying, because maybe they haven't been validated for those things before. I'll normalize what they're saying. And then once I do that, and it settles in them and they realize, oh, this is okay to think and feel and say, I'll say like, to what extent have you shared that with your partner? And if they haven't, I'll say like, could you, like, how would you say it? And they'll often say like, well, I guess I could just say what I just told you. And I'm like, yeah, you could. Like, what would that be like? So really, there isn't one way to say it or go about it. You just got to say it to someone. And if you don't have a coach, or you don't have a therapist or a friend or a group, even without all that, journal. You can write it down. Like, I do morning pages every day. I write 3 pages every morning when I wake up. It's like a brain dump. No one else ever sees it. But when you take the thoughts out of your head and put them onto the page, they become real in a sense. You're putting a real thing into the world, and then you can see them clearly. It's harder to like deny it in your mind,
Mm.
and you kind of have to reckon with what's there, and that can be scary, but it's so helpful, and you'll start to create awareness and see what's in your mind and how you might say it, how you might not want to say it, which parts of it you don't need to you don't have to
Mm.
share every single thought in your head to be authentic. But that creates awareness. And it's always about finding that balance of
Yeah.
being truthful and open and also sensitive, and your partner, and you don't have to say everything all at once, and finding that balance is different, looks different for each person. But I'm also now running a group for women who are in relationships with queer men, and most of them are straight themselves. So this is a new kind of experiment. It's going well, but like I'm starting to work with that population too, because they're going through this thing where their husband
Mm.
came out, and it's all interrelated. So that's
Mm.
a new thing
Out
I'm
of
doing.
interest, how do you find that, Rob?
It's
Yeah,
fascinating. I mean,
yeah.
I work with them the same way. Like I don't teach them, I don't tell them what to do or give advice. I'm really just holding space for them and normalizing and validating whatever's coming up and asking them probing and empowering questions
Mm.
to help them figure out what they want to do moving forward. But I'm enjoying and learning a lot, seeing the other side of it, because I hear about their point of view from the men I coach, but now I'm getting to hear directly like what feelings are coming up in them. And,
Mm.
it's all valid and interesting, and it helps me see the possibilities of what can go on. But, each partnership is so individual, anything
Of
is
course.
possible. So,
Yeah.
there's no like rules I'm coming up with or anything. Okay. A couple things I see the most is like, well, the women shared everything about them when they got married, and this is a new thing that their husband is introducing into the marriage that they didn't
Mm.
know about, or sometimes the husband has hinted at it in the past but didn't really share that this is an important part of their identity, and they never thought they would open the relationship, like they want monogamy. So this feels like a burden that's come in that they had nothing to do with, and that their husbands are putting on them, and now they have
Mm.
to get
Mm.
comfortable with it, or they have to make an agreement that they don't want to, and what are they getting out of it? Sometimes there's that line of thinking, and I think that's very valid and understandable.
Mm.
And like what I try to work on with people is, okay, well, your husband is like opening up about this need or desire that he might not have shared, but has been there. And even if it hadn't been there and it's new, it's still just as valid. That doesn't mean you have to open things up, but like this is a thing about him that is important, and that has to be talked about. And what's important to you? Like, how do you feel the relationship is going? Is there anything you're missing?
Mm.
Sometimes there isn't. So it can feel like this imbalance, and that's a thing to
Mm.
work through. Sometimes there are things missing for wives that are maybe they're unrelated to sex or sexuality. Maybe they're more
Sure.
about romance or spending time or something else entirely. But like,
Mm.
what would you like to see to feel more close to your partner and more intimate? That
Mm.
can be, something to look into. And then there's the other big thing I'll mention, and then maybe I'll stop, is this feeling of like being enough.
Mm.
When your partner wants to explore sex outside of marriage that has been monogamous, that can feel like, I'm not enough. Did I do something wrong? How can I fulfill this desire? Like, especially within monogamy, we want to be everything for our partners, and we want them to be everything for us. And that's a story like that is told in our society, and it's ingrained in many people. And for many people that is aligned, right? Like
Mm.
that's a true, authentic version of a relationship they want. But then there's this now misalignment because their partner is saying, actually, I want something outside of this partnership. And it's about working through those feelings of like being enough and being good enough and lovable enough and attractive enough. And most of the husbands will say, you are enough. You're more than enough. Like, I love you. I want to stay in this partnership. It's so important to me. And these other desires that I want to explore are, have nothing to do with you not being enough. It's just this other separate thing that I want to explore to feel whole and to understand myself. And it's like very difficult to kind of square that. Like, people view these things differently. And I have a personal view. I try to just hold space for wherever people are. But that can be difficult to square that round peg of like, you're enough, but I also need more. Like, it's almost a contradiction as I explain it. And yet it's very possible, and it comes up all the time. And I believe that core connection can be really strong and really aligned, and something that should continue and deepen even when there's desire for sex outside the marriage. To me, that is compatible, but to some people it is not compatible, and
Sure.
Everyone's different.
Yes, I mean, you just used the word desire there, and what somebody wants. I suppose their thoughts and feelings, that's an experience, isn't it? To actually then engage in a romantic or sexual relationship outside of the marriage would be a behavior. A couple of things there. Have you worked with people, men, who have decided not to tell a partner that it was enough to talk to you about it?
That's interesting. Honestly, no, I have not directly worked with that. Like, everyone I've worked with has eventually either quickly, or they just did it before they got to me, or they're working on it and it happens soon. I have never actually worked with anyone who decided, I'm not going to tell my wife about what's going on in here, about their sexuality. I'm sure that happens. I actually probably would guess there's more people in that boat than people that eventually tell their wives. But when they come to me, there must have been some movement or recognition that the status quo is not sustainable, that they need to change something. And that's part of why they're finding me. And look, I think it, like, whatever you decide is valid, but I do think it's really difficult to keep these things in. And so, like, you don't have to broadcast it to the world, but I do think if you're in a committed partnership, this should be something you can share with them. If you're at the point where you really feel like you can't, either for your own reason, like if it's for an internal reason, you don't feel comfortable, that's what I would work on with them in coaching or therapy, is like, why can't you share that? Like, what's blocking you? If it's the other person really won't accept it, and you're ready to share, but the consequences would be too extreme, maybe that's not an aligned partnership. Because to me, a true partnership is one where you can share anything with each other, and you do. You don't have to do everything with each other, but you have to be open. Like, I think if you're not open with each other about everything, what is that partnership? What does that really mean? Is it maybe that's really a friendship and not a primary partnership? And so I would say, like, work on getting to the place where you can do that, or think about, like, what does that say if you can't about this partnership?
Because I think it does go back to, doesn't it? It is a want or desire isn't necessarily a behavior, but that can be the thing that's assumed, is that it's going to inevitably lead to a behavior, or that's the reason someone's telling you, as they want to engage in the behavior. And maybe that is the case, but it's not. The two aren't the same, are they?
The one thing you said is so important, of like, you don't have to act out everything. And like, some people will fear that, oh, you're telling me this because you want to open things up.
Right.
And I often coach people, like, separate those things. Like, telling your partner is one thing. It does not need in this moment to be tied to opening things up. They're separate things. And a lot of partners will worry about the slippery slope of it all. Like, okay, and then if we do start to open things up in a narrow way, will that be enough? Or will he want to open it more? And where will it lead? And is it I think the biggest fear is, okay, you're saying to me now you want to be in this relationship that works this way? What if you fall in love with this person you're going to have sex with? And what if you leave me? And I think that's the slope that causes a lot of anxiety and fear and blocks the paths forward. Is this is the beginning of the end.
We may have touched on that the last time we spoke. I can't quite remember. Living a life, I suppose, sacrificing that. What would you say about that?
Like I've coached some people like that who, like, their wives say no, or they don't want to put their wives through that because they know how upsetting it would be. And so they decide they're not even going to ask for this, even though they want it. It's, it can be really difficult. And I think it's an okay choice to make too. Like if you can live without this, like, it's been great for me to explore it. It's opened me up in so many ways, but like, that doesn't mean that's for everyone. It can't, like, I know people that it can be enough to just fantasize or watch porn or like talk, use toys and like explore it in tangential ways and not explore it. Maybe one way to look at it is it's like, it's a sacrifice you're willing to make. And we all make sacrifices in relationships.
Sure.
You can really love someone and want to be with them, and not every single thing is aligned. And maybe that's aligned with your values to make that sacrifice. And you can lead a lovely, happy, stable, calm, peaceful life. And there can be excitement coming in other ways. It's just a question of like, can you do that? How important is it to you, and how important is the partnership to you, and having those boundaries?
Rob, this is a bit more personal. I would take it out if you don't want to answer it, of course.
Okay.
But in terms of exploring with other people, you have said about polyamory. You said that, didn't you?
Yeah. I identify that way, I think.
Okay.
I'm exploring it.
Not falling in love with other people, because identifying that as an understandable fear. Would you say that would be about making sure your existing relationship is intimate, loving, and if that is the case, the presence of that means romantically being attracted to somebody else probably won't happen?
Interesting question. There's a lot there. Well, first of all, I was going to say this earlier, I forgot, but like, when the partner has a fear that, like, of that slippery slope, or where will this lead, or you might fall in love with someone, that's a valid fear. Like, yes, fear and anxiety can get in the way, and it's a block to work through, but it also might happen. Like, it's not like that never happens. Sometimes people say, let's open it up, and I love you, and we'll never break up, and this is just a little side thing, and then they fall in love and it becomes a bigger thing. Like, so nobody knows. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Anything can happen, and that's a fear that could come true. Look, I think that if your relationship is loving and aligned and strong, that makes it less likely that some other relationship will threaten it. If the love is real and you're communicating and you have intimacy, like, yeah, it's unlikely some other thing is going to come in and replace that. And often when an outside relationship comes in and does become more important, it reveals misalignments or issues that need to be addressed in that first relationship. And so sometimes this is a symptom of misaligned relationships, and people can't yet address it. And so they move outside, and then it blows up, and it's sort of what needed to happen or what should have happened, but it's in a roundabout way. And so that is a fear too. Like, it is possible, if your partner is wanting to explore outside, it's because they're not happy in this. Like, that's not always the case, but it is a possibility. And the way I view love as a polyamorous by nature person is that love is not a zero-sum game. It's a muscle that can expand infinitely. There can be more and more. It's not like I have this much love, and so if I'm giving some to another person, that's less for you. I don't view it that way. And so I feel like my love for a primary partner is not necessarily affected by exploring with others. But that's me. It can be different for different people. We only have so much energy to share, and it could take away, maybe it's not zero sum, but maybe it does lead you to have less energy for a partner. And like, you just never know. Like, things can happen that you can't predict. And so like, I love what polyamory, what's interesting to me about it is like, you know you make a daily commitment to each person, and it's never a lifelong commitment. You're checking in each day. And so that actually means, it's nice in my mind. It means every day you're choosing to be with someone.
Sure.
It's an active choice. It's not
Yeah.
just an obligation from your marriage vows 30 years ago that you're living with. You have to make that active choice every day to want to be with someone on a continued basis. But that also introduces uncertainty and discomfort. And for some people, making a vow and sticking to it for decades does bring that sense of peace and calm and certainty that is helpful for them. So it depends on the person.
Absolutely fascinating. Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. We're just about coming to an end, really. But is there anything that you would say? Any sort of final words for someone who is in the situation of coming to awareness and then thinking about whether to explore, how to explore?
Step number one is your own self work. Like, don't rush into it until you've done some work on yourself and got clear, and especially, I think, talk to someone about it, or at least journal to get yourself to an energy of love and compassion and acceptance, as opposed to, resistance or confusion, or like, I need to explore this to, like that pushing energy, or like the victim energy, or the resentful energy. Like, you've been holding me back. Like, take a minute to get out of that energy and to get into one of like understanding yourself and knowing what's important to you, and being able to go with the flow and have compassion for your partner, be able to see their point of view while holding your own. And then, enter that process. Once you've done that self work, enter that process with that energy and with openness and compassion. And that doesn't mean then just go along with whatever your partner says and thinks and feels, because they will get activated, and things they say may not be exactly right in that moment moving forward. Give them time, give them space. You've been doing this work. They might need time and space to process and to feel, that sense of calm, and to get back to a stable, not activated baseline. So be patient. And then eventually, once you're there, then you can have that negotiation and balance the patience with, confidence in yourself and belief in yourself, and the knowledge that you can't just ignore this or repress it in yourself. So like, how can you move forward within this partnership in a way that honors what's true for you, and also is respectful and loving to a partner? The energy that you bring into the conversation with a partner, that's the energy that will go into whatever agreement you make. And so you don't want to make an agreement out of anxiety or fear or anger or resentment. You want to make an agreement out of, self-love and love for your partner, and respect and understanding and validation. So like, get yourself to that place before you have the conversation, but also don't wait forever. Like, honor yourself too.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've been amazing, predictably.
Well, thank you, John Paul. You ask amazing questions. Like, we're really getting into the meat of it, and I just think this experience is so much more common than people think. which is why, like, I've seen this topic resonate on your YouTube page so much. Like, I'm seeing it more and more, and I'm moving more and more into this space because I just think there's so many couples out there going through this, and it's very hidden. So thank you for highlighting this and having me back, and thank you for a lovely conversation. This was great.
Okay, thank you.